Formally, anybody who's been following our vlog will know we have a dialogue every morning, which is not very well thought through, but is a stream of consciousness about what's striking us from the previous day. So in that spirit, we'd just like to share with you thoughts about three questions, really. What we've been learning about Suffolk, what we've been learning about the church and faith, and what we've been learning about one another. So Martin, what have you been learning about Suffolk?
First of all, that just walking means you see things you don't see otherwise. So we've seen a huge variety. We've seen the way in which things move from the coast, change from the coast to Bury. We've seen the season change. It was snowdrops at first, then the crocuses, and then the daffodils, and now the hawthorn. So we saw that in the 10 days. But I think one of the things that has struck me is, I mentioned we've been to 17 businesses, we've been to some farms, we've been to a variety of operations, and within each of those there were people who were absolutely passionate about what they're doing, who used language of vocation, and who were creative, innovative, adaptable. And the reason that these businesses are doing as well as they are, the farms are doing as well as they are, is because they have learned to adapt. And they've got the ingenuity in the individuals who are leading them and in the workforce to do that. And that was striking in a county where we think, sleepy Suffolk, but actually it's innovative Suffolk, was really, really striking.
Yeah. And for me, I think the hospitality and generosity really struck me. We were given great hospitality throughout. I think I want to show you my favourite gift, though, which was a little book from Creting St Mary Primary School. Rachel Jordan in the National Church says 88% of young people come to faith before the age of 11. So this is critical work we're doing with our young people in the primary schools. And they gave us a book with all the children's comments about, for Lent I am giving up. And then they had to fill in what they were giving up. And I think my favourites were, and there are some great ones in here from which I've learned, but my favourite ones, for Lent I am giving up fruit. For Lent I'm giving up my bed, which was a challenge for parents, but my favourite one of all was, for Lent I'm giving up. Which is great. But I think it's been really touching, the hospitality we have received. And the reading from Luke 10 is all about, as disciples, we are being sent out to be recipients of the hospitality of others, which then begins to frame things very differently in terms of the conversations we've had. And certainly I think that's one of the things I've been noticing. And alongside that hospitality is a kind of hiddenness as well in Suffolk, that people are not only by and large unwilling to advertise some of the creativity and the innovation, but also highly reticent about it. And there's something of a challenge in that, in actually celebrating the generosity and the hospitality and affirming that, when actually it can be so reticent and so covered over in some ways.
Our second question was, what have we learned about the church? Now, can I just add my favourite from that?
Yeah.
It was not overfeeding my guinea pig.
That's not Martin's guinea pig, that's the child's guinea pig. So shall I go? So with faith in the church, or do you want to go?
Why don't you go?
Right. We know a bit better today. Normally on the vlog, we sort of say, no, you go, because I haven't thought of anything yet. And then we're staring at each other, panicking about what we're going to say while the other one's speaking. But anyway, church and the faith. I think it's this issue of vocation. Why would people want to invite in two wandering bishops into their firm, their commercial operation, their industry? Why would they want to do that? And yet we've seen sushi factories doing it, wheat grain manufacturers doing it, tourist agencies doing it. And I think it relates to this issue about a passion for their work. They are passionate about their work and they're looking to want to share that with other people. But I think it goes deeper than that. And as you said, the language of vocation was something we heard repeatedly. And there is something about their sense of working for the common good that they want to share with others. And my suspicion is, at least in some cases, that they, hopefully identify bishops with a search for the common good. And part of the challenge for us is how we connect that passion and that vocation and that focus on the common good in providing good jobs and in products that are actually serving humanity. How we connect that serving of the common good with the one who is goodness himself. And that's about, I guess, invitation, about conversation, which is not about imposition, but how we recognise the people of peace in our passage that we were talking about, and how we announce the kingdom, if you like, talk about the kingdom coming near, and connect that search for the common good with the one who is good in ways which are genuinely open and engaging. And it felt like a few times we were doing that. And I could see in some of the Christian communities that we were coming across that there were some quite creative ways in which that kind of partnering was happening. So in terms of church and the faith, I'm thinking that there are considerably more opportunities in terms of common ground and partnering, and considerable more challenge to us in terms of how we announce the kingdom in those settings. So that was something for me. What about you?
Let me just say something specifically about congregations. We saw, I think, 22 churches. We may have been in benefices where there were other churches with congregations, parishes within those benefices that we didn't see. There was an interesting story as we went along, where there were some congregations that were flourishing and some that were struggling. And one of the factors, not the only factor, but one of the factors I think we observed was that certainly the ones that were flourishing did so because there were one or two people, often lay people supported by the clergy, one or two people in that community who were enabling that flourishing, were taking a lead, were passionate about it, and the same gifts and qualities of adaptability and innovation and so forth that we saw in the businesses were there alive and well in the churches, in the ones that were working well. And I think one of the things that came out of this for us was, how do we support that? How do we enable that to happen where people may feel unable to step forward, unable to take that sort of lead and responsibility? How do we facilitate that engagement, that adaptability, creativity, innovation in those places where that isn't so evident? So I found it incredibly heartening, the places we went to, many of them where people had just got a vision for the church and their community, and that was evident when you walked through the door of the church. It was also evident in the conversations we had about what they were doing in their wider village and town.
Yeah. Final question. What are we learning about one another? The passage says we're sent out in pairs. We went out in a pair. What are we learning about one another? Martin, what are you learning about me?
I'm going to say something about that, but
first of all, the affirmation.
I have to build, I say 4 positive things and then I can say what I really mean. I think that first of all, it has been really powerful for us to be doing this as a pair. And I think it's there in the gospel, but we sometimes forget that it's there in the gospel. Going out in pairs, whether that's door knocking or whether it's paying a visit to a new community or whatever, going out as two people who are committed, identifiably committed, who will, and that's facilitated our engagement with the places that we've gone to. But it's also been a real kind of strengthening of our attention to one another, our care for one another, and our sort of reciprocity. And we've learned a lot about each other over these past 10 days, because we've literally spent, apart from, there was one night when we were in 2 separate houses, but we were otherwise 24 hours a day in the same place. One particular thing that I've learned about Mike, I think I probably knew it already, but I've seen it sharply, is that Mike's theological fluency, his perception of the work of God in our lives is right on the surface, so that Mike is able to be in any situation and can speak about what he's experiencing God being up to there very fluently and very readily. And that is an extraordinary gift. It's a remarkable gift that I would wish I were better at and seek to learn from Mike about. And it's something I think many of us would want to aspire to be able to engage in that fluency, and for it to be right. The first thing we think of is what's God up to here. Thank you, Mike.
Right, thank you. So what am I learning about Bishop Martin? I'm learning he's a man of great spontaneity. He's walking along and suddenly he will come up with something because he's just been thinking, we need to invest in a metal detector. We have to find the coffin of St Edmund.
Yes. Yes.
We had been talking about Richard III before. Finding this. That was the context. So there's that remarkable spontaneity. The other thing is a man of deep agricultural knowledge. We went to I was very impressed with this. We went to the farm and Martin was looking at the grass. He said, that looks like winter wheat to me. And the farmer said, that's right, it is winter wheat. I was less impressed at the next farm when he said the same thing. But anyway. But I think one of the things, and again, this is something that struck me anew and afresh, was your passion and therefore impatience and frustration with that which is getting in the way and blocking and preventing the people of God with connecting and being involved in the mission of God. Whether that's some of the structures by which we operate as a church, whether that's the processes by which people come to ministry of one or another kinds, whether that's the ways in which people are hogtied from expressing their gifts in all sorts of different ways. And your real can-do attitude and approach and energy for engaging with issues which too often are either put in the too difficult box or just avoided. So that's something I've really appreciated being in the presence of these past urban days.
Thank you. Here ends the presidential address. And we will now hand over to...
Before you go too far, we have a little gift for you.
I gather yesterday you stopped at Green King.
We did.
They have left a couple of carriers of 6 bottles. They're not Bishop's finger, which they really should be. Instead, they're Old Crafty Hen, which perhaps, I don't quite know what to make of that. But there we go. Don't drink them all now. Take them home with you. But I thought that you might enjoy those. I think we should give our bishops a really big round of applause.